Good afternoon. My name is Nicole Malzin with EngageBay. Today, we're excited to continue our series where we sit down with the biggest names in sales and marketing. For this episode, our guest is leading social media speaker, educator, and innovator Neal Schaffer. Neal has spent most of his professional life helping businesses through their digital transformation of sales and marketing through consulting, training, and helping enterprises big and small develop and execute on social media marketing strategy, influencer marketing, and social selling initiatives. As president of the social media agency PDCA Social, Neal also teaches digital media to executives at Rutgers University and the Irish Management Institute. Fluent in Japanese and Mandarin Chinese, Neal has been invited to speak about digital media on 4 continents and in a dozen countries. He's recognized as a Forbes Top 50 social media power influencer and a Forbes Top 5 social sales influencer. So without any further ado, here is Neal Schaffer. How are you doing today, Neal?
I'm doing awesome, Nicole. How are you doing?
I'm good. All right, let's get started with the first question. I know that you were in California for primary school, and then you studied in Taiwan and Beijing, and you went to Amherst for a little bit. How has the journey been for you?
Well, I assume you're talking about my experience in Asia and with Asian languages. So I am a Southern California native, and I grew up in an area where we had a lot of Asian Americans. So when I was in high school, I'd say about 30% of the school was Asian American, but many of my friends ended up being Chinese American, Korean American, Japanese American, Vietnamese American, and I was already going to parties in high school where I was the only Chinese speaking person there. So this really began my journey as to, well, what is it that is connecting me with these cultures? And when I went to Amherst for school, I decided that this was going to be the place where I was going to learn a foreign language and I was going to do my junior abroad. And so it just made sense. Most of my friends were Chinese American to learn Chinese, and I did my junior abroad. So if you go to my LinkedIn profile, it's a little bit confusing, but I went to Amherst College the summer before I did my junior abroad in Beijing. I went to Donghai University in Taichung, Taiwan. And then I went to Beijing Normal University for my junior year. And then after I graduated, I sort of switched gears into Japanese, and I did a summer intensive at the International Christian University in Tokyo before I started working in Japan.
Wow, that is quite a resume. All right, so let's talk a little bit about small business. How difficult would you say it is for a small business to get ready for digital transformation?
I think small businesses are used to sort of, advertise, pay money, and see immediate results. And paying money means paying a little bit of money, but expecting a lot of results. So, in general, it really does take money to make money. And even in organic social media, it requires people, requires resources in order to be able to tell your story. This is just I think more and more as social media becomes more pay to play, we do get back to it's all just part of traditional advertising, promotion and marketing. So that is really the hard thing, I think, for a lot of small businesses to swallow, is that even this new digital or social, requires advertising, requires expense. But on the flip side, before digital, there were very, very limited ways in which we could reach out to customers. Now with digital, I mean, we can be online 24/7 with a website, right? With a social media presence, what have you. And that's really the exciting thing. And with those paid instruments, we have the ability to really micro-target people. We have the ability to find people that should be interested in us, but for whatever reason, never heard about us. And we have a way to engage with them. We can recruit other people to help engage those communities. And this is where we go into influencer strategy. We can, create very, very unique content that can live on a YouTube or on a Pinterest and can bring in leads day in and day out for days, weeks, months, years. So there's obviously a lot of benefits to embracing the digital transformation, but it really begins with, this is a sales, this is sort of our advertising marketing budget. How much are we going to get out of that? How do we use that efficiently? And if we want to get to the next level in terms of increasing sales, then these are the best steps we need to do. And that's where it really comes down to a lot of the strategy and consulting work that I've done. Hey, we know we need to be more active in social and digital. We know we need to do it better. We've wasted money working with other people or agencies or consultants, and we haven't seen any results. How do we do this? And that's really, one of the sweet spots is really taking a look at, what sort of business do you have? Where have you traditionally gotten your leads? right? Before social and digital. And then how can we make sure that you are using the correct channels in the right ways with the right organic paid mix, with the right mix of content to enable to get you to achieve the results that you're looking for.
Okay. So getting back to influencer marketing for a minute, what kind of tips would you offer for small businesses who want to, find influencers or pay for influencers?
So really, we're sort of putting the cart before the horse, because if we take a step back, the social media strategy will sort of determine what networks that your customers are on, right? So without knowing that, the knee jerk for a lot of companies, we need to do Facebook ads, when in fact LinkedIn ads may be the best place for you to be if you're a B2B company, for instance. So really, if we're going to do an ad, what is the ad going to be about? And here's where we get into the ROI of doing this. So I think small businesses want to see direct sales attributed to those ads. So you have to set your ad up and be on the right network with the right call to action in order to achieve that. If you're just doing an ad for likes, there's no ROI in that, right? It's a vanity metric. Obviously, you want to build community. And I could see some investment being done in that, especially at the beginning when you're launching a presence. But really, you want to offer something that people would be interested in, that you can then, create a relationship with. So, we talk about small businesses. There's a small business for every type of industry out there. So it's really hard to put all small businesses of all industries into one bucket, right? Obviously, if you have a retail outlet, it's how do we get people into our store to try our product? And maybe it's giving a freebie, maybe it's a sale, maybe it is a special day just for your Facebook fans. I mean, I don't know, right? If it is an online, product or service, it could be a coupon. It could be a buy one, get one free. It could be some sort of an incentive. If you're a B2B service, it could be, a free 30-day trial, whatever it is. But if you really want to judge the ROI of your ad spend, even in social media, you need to have that sort of mindset, and that for whatever you're going to pose an ad for, what is the cost of an email subscription? What is the value of an email subscription? What is the cost of getting someone into our store? What is the value of getting someone into our store? And these are some of the metrics that I think a lot of small businesses really haven't thought through. So they're okay spending $500 a month on Yelp because it feels good and it feels right. But if you look at the analytics, what is that getting you compared to if you were going to spend that same $500 on a Facebook ad, which is going to be a very, very different type of ad, because with Yelp, you're just showing up. With Facebook, you have to ask for something. So these are the things I think that businesses need to think about and prepare in order to really, really be successful, and to make sure they're not wasting a lot of money in paid social, which is very, very easy to do.
Mm-hmm. So I know earlier you said you were writing a book on influencer marketing, and one of the books that you wrote was about LinkedIn.
Yes.
It's called Windmill Networking, Understanding, Leveraging, and Maximizing LinkedIn. So that was back in 2009. How do you see LinkedIn now versus then, and what do you think it'll look like in the future in terms for small business and how it'll affect them?
It's literally been a decade. So
yeah.
I recently recorded a podcast where I was talking about the concept of social media marketing 2.0. So it's been a decade. These platforms are mature now, right? And I think if you're still doing the same thing you did 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, even maybe a year ago, you're just not going to be as successful. I think what any social network requires of any business, regardless of how large or small you are, is number one, a more human approach. So this is where the concept of influencers and collaborating with them, but also leveraging what's called user-generated content, using the content that influencers and others that talk about your company to really, represent your voice, right? So you're not just talking about yourselves, you're also publishing content about others talking about you. So if people are talking about you, that's awesome. You have the ability to do that. If not, you should be working with influencers or paid social or both to try to incite word of mouth marketing. So that's the number one thing. Number two thing is that companies, people want to do business with companies they know, like, and trust. And it's very easy to get known through advertising and through content and influencer collaborations, but getting liked and trusted is another story. So I think there's an increasing need to humanize your content, to really, there used to be a big wall between the brand and people. And brands always wanted to keep themselves distant from people. But I think now brands want to become part of people. You want to become as close to people as possible. And this means maybe, actually engaging with other people on social media instead of having a one-way conversation, and not just waiting for people to comment on your post, but actually proactively engaging with other people, whether through searches or with your own followers. This is something that I think is definitely necessary, humanizing that content and actually proactively engaging more and more so today than it ever has been, if you really want to make that relationship, because all of the social media algorithms depend on relationships, right? So people engaging with your content will get you some of that. But when you start to build more two-way communication, the social network algorithms realize that, and they really start to prioritize your content in the feeds of those fans. So that's definitely a best practice, right? I think the other thing that's definitely changed over the last decade without a question is the content medium. So we know that videos, photos, videos, stories, right? Live stream. These are sort of the four types of content that have, and you could say IGTV. I'll say it's part of video. So these have become huge, and brands that have embraced these content mediums have done really well, at a minimum of photos. But obviously, if you were to go into your LinkedIn stream, specifically to LinkedIn, definitely not just photos, but videos really get preference. And I've seen the stats of some people that do LinkedIn live streams, which is not available for everybody yet, but you can apply to become a LinkedIn live streamer. The results are pretty impressive. So these are the things that you need as a company, as a small business. I think it's really harder and harder than it used to be because of all these content mediums, which require you to be good at photography or at video, because the people that are posting are at a very, very high level, right? They know how to use, Photoshop presets and all the filters and all the apps. So it is more challenging. And this is why, for small businesses, it does become more difficult, and where you really need to either have that sort of resource on staff or work with an agency or consultant who can help you with that. But, photography, videography almost becomes a necessary skill set for a social media marketer today in 2019. So for the small business owner that's trying to wear a lot of hats, this is something you really probably should be outsourcing, or bringing in that resource to be able to do that for you. But so the other thing I wanted to mention specific to LinkedIn, so we talked about obviously humanizing and proactively engaging, and we talked about the different content mediums. I think the other thing is that we are forever hijacking these platforms. So what I mean by this is, Facebook was originally for college students. Then it was for 20-somethings. Now it's for old people, right? And LinkedIn has gone through a similar progression. LinkedIn now, just as millennials are the majority of our workforce here in the United States, millennials are out in force on LinkedIn, and they've changed the nature of LinkedIn. They'll post the same sorts of things they may post on a Facebook. So the conversation is getting a little bit more casual. And this is why, we have this concept of lifestyle content that began on Facebook. We have it on Instagram as well, but it's just very, very broad content to engage your audience. You're not just talking about your products, your services, your company, but you're tying in lifestyle, like holidays, like what your employees did at your, holiday party last night. Some of your employees went to the beach yesterday and you had a little company picnic. I don't know what it is, right? But it's also, and it's sort of related to that humanizing, but it's exposing this sort of lifestyle aspect. And it's really, really important for personal brands, obviously, but this lifestyle aspect of content that makes it very, very easy to humanize your brand and to get more people to like, know, and trust your company.
Okay, so for B2B networking, would you say LinkedIn is, on better than Twitter or Facebook, or on par, or, how do you kind of?
Yeah, if I was to sort of map out all the different social networks, in terms of B2B, LinkedIn is still number one. And if I was to put a number two, I might go with a Twitter. Although there's definitely cases for B2B on Facebook. There's, more and more of a case for B2B on Instagram. I don't think we're there yet. But we are starting to see more of that, especially if you're a small business. It definitely is possible. So, if you're already very active on Instagram and you're a B2B and you want to try to figure out how to make it work, you might be able to. But LinkedIn is just a no-brainer, right? From a B2C perspective, it used to just be Facebook. Well, we can't say that anymore because Instagram has grown so big, and you can still get a lot of engagement organically on Instagram. And not as many people are active on Instagram as they are on Facebook. So that gives small businesses a chance, right? Now, the other interesting one is Pinterest. And if you have e-commerce and you're targeting a female demographic, Pinterest is also a really, really great network that you don't want to forget about, which may be equally competitive to Facebook and Instagram. Twitter is out there. I think for B2B, it's more important. Certainly there are consumer brands that have been very, very successful on Twitter. It's a great place for, customer service, but I don't think it's going to be your top priority for B2B or B2C, in all honesty. And then, you have YouTube. If you have videos, you're going to post them on YouTube. So YouTube is less of a social network and more of a discovery engine or a search engine. So that's why, YouTube is going to be irrelevant to industry. I mean, everybody, if you're producing videos, you'll want to house them there. And I think we can say the same thing for Twitter. I mean, it really is a search engine for real-time news. So you'll want to have a presence there, and you'll want to be publishing, news about your company, what have you. But really, I think the strategic ones are going to be LinkedIn, and then Facebook, Instagram, with Pinterest being a little bit below that in terms of, strategic importance.
Okay, that's really interesting. So next I want to talk about one of your quotes, which was, social media wasn't made for business, it was made for people. Businesses will always be at a disadvantage engaging in social. What do you mean by that?
So this, comes down to being true to the nature of the platform. So businesses, a lot of small businesses, they go onto the social networks and they just start blasting and every tweet's a promotion. And you got to remember, you got to take a step back and remember that social is made for people, right? People are there. People are on Facebook, engaging with friends, talking to their parents, looking at their kids' photos. So whenever you post content, you are competing with them, right? So what content do you think people want to see in their feed? Your promotional ad or a picture of their daughter's elementary school graduation? Mm-hmm. So it's something we always have to keep in mind, that businesses are invading on the turf of people. And that's why you're always at a disadvantage. I mean, that's the number one reason, is that inherently you want to promote your company, but that goes against why people are on social media. They're not there to be sold to, right? So that's the first, concept that I think is important to grasp based around that quote. The other one is that these algorithms work because they want to expose good content, relevant content to every user to make users stay on the platform longer. Now, why is it in the best interest of social networks to make sure you stay on the network longer? It's because they want you to consume more ads, because that's how these social networks stay in business, is through ad revenue. So if they are going to monetize content through ads, who are they going to monetize it from? They're going to monetize it from businesses, right? So, the organic content of your business is always, for the fact that you have a business profile, you're always going to be at a disadvantage in how the algorithm works. They're always going to favor people over business pages unless you've built a tremendous amount of engagement and affinity with certain users. But in general, you're going to be at that disadvantage as well. So those are the things to consider. And that's why, organically, you really, really have to humanize your content from an organic perspective, and introduce concepts related to lifestyle content in order to be successful. And as social networks become more and more pay to play, it's going to be a necessary evil. You're going to have to pay for that privilege. But even if you do paid social, you need to remember this concept if you want your advertising to really, really be successful there.
Okay. So you have a huge following on Twitter. I think you have 222,000 followers, maybe more at this point. So what advice would you have for businesses to build their own large following like that and to kind of keep engaging with people?
So while I'm talking with you, I am going to go, and I get asked this a lot. Hey, Neil, how do I build a big following on Twitter like you? So when I go to my profile on Twitter, and let me just navigate over here. When I go to my profile, I see that I joined Twitter in September of 2008. Mm-hmm. So we talk about it. It's time for social media marketing 2.0. And, I've been doing this for 11 years. You don't build audiences overnight. And if I see someone just join Instagram and all of a sudden they have 10,000 followers, that to me is a red flag that they've bought followers. Okay. So you never, ever want to buy followers. If you want to do advertisements to attract the right audience to your page, your profile, that's fine. That I would say is the best practice at the beginning. That is something you may want to do. But study after study shows that I think at the beginning of social networks, very early on with LinkedIn, might have been with Twitter and with some others, the volume of community you had really did help you get more engagement which then made you do better in the algorithms. Today, it's not the case. The algorithms have become so sophisticated that they are looking on a one-on-one basis as to each person's relationship, assuming they're following your brand, with your company's content. So they are getting much, much better using machine learning, using artificial intelligence, so that, I look at my daughter, who is a 14-year-old high school freshman, and she only has 300 followers, but she'll get, when she does Instagram stories, she may get over 100 engagements. And I'm not saying views, like engagements, like when she does poll questions. And that is because every one of those people are engaging quite a bit with all those other people, right? So for a business to be able to get 100 engagements on an Instagram story, they may need thousands of followers in order to do that, because the relationship that they have with a person is going to be a lot weaker than the relationship that people have with each other, right? So that's why the number really isn't as important. I did a podcast interview yesterday, a live stream with someone that developed an app for Instagram. And at the end of it, she goes, Neil, I'm so happy that for the 30-minute interview, you never once asked the question about how do I get more followers? Because there have been people with just a few thousand followers on Instagram that have made more money than people with tens of thousands of followers. So I know as a business, right, you're always going to be looking at number of followers is important. And it is important that you want to continue to grow that. But what's more important is not the number of followers, whether it's on Twitter or any other platform. It's the number of engagements you get from those platforms. It's the number of customers you get from the platforms, the number of inquiries you get from the platforms. That is the number one thing you should be looking at, and you should be prioritizing your activity on those networks based on that. So for me, when I look at my blog, neilschaffer.com, Twitter consistently sends me the most traffic. I have a large following there. I'm verified, but I also publish a lot of news, and the news isn't just about my blog. I try to share a lot of industry news and really become a channel. And Twitter's a place that people go looking for the news, right? The second most traffic that I get, believe it or not, is from Pinterest. And that's why I speak about Pinterest, because I know it drives a lot of traffic. Even though I wasn't really active on there for a few years, I'm still getting traffic. So now I'm getting more active. And even though, my Facebook page has 28,000 fans, my LinkedIn profile has 41,000 followers, and Facebook and LinkedIn are, the biggest B2C, B2B network. I have days where Instagram drives me more traffic than any of these social networks, right? And consistently, Twitter and Pinterest outperform Facebook and LinkedIn. So those are just, every network is different. You're going to find different ROIs on different networks. It's not about the followers. I'm not saying this Twitter is most successful because I have the most followers. It's because I have the most website traffic. And going forward, it's going to be because that's where I have the most email conversions or the more product conversions. And this is really the level that your business should get to. But I think it's really important, right? This is social media marketing 2.0. We want to think about things a little bit differently. We want to be a little bit more savvy. And just like there comes a day where you may want to delete people from your email list because they've been inactive. You may want to delete LinkedIn connections because they're irrelevant. You may want to block people that follow you on Instagram because they've never posted before. They found you through, uploading their Facebook contacts, and they've never posted before, but they're following you. And here's the thing, whenever you publish in any of these networks, the networks are going to show it to all those different people. And the more they engage, the more people they show it to. But if it's going out to these people that are irrelevant, right? Or the same thing goes with email marketing. If it's going out to people that just don't engage with your list, they downloaded their free PDF and they're done with you, or to an Instagram profile that isn't even active, you are losing engagement. Your engagement's going to go down, right? So now actually smaller is a little bit better, right? It's more about the engagement rate. And by making our lists a little bit smaller, if we can increase that engagement rate, it's actually going to reach a bigger audience than if we had a bigger, less engaged list. So this is a really, really important concept. I know it goes against what a lot of people say and what people have been saying, but this has been my strategy and the strategy that I use with my clients. And the businesses that have been really successful doing this, when I talk to them about this, most of them do nod their head and agree that this is the best practice.
Okay, that's very interesting. So thank you for sharing that. So where do you think, if any place, does SEO have in social media today?
I'm sorry, can you please repeat that?
What role, if any, do you think SEO has in social media?
SEO, I love SEO. So here's the thing. As big as I am in social, the number one driver of traffic to my website is Google, right? And that shouldn't come as a surprise. So, part of the digital transformation that we began the conversation about is the concept of having content, right? If you don't have content, you can't be active in social media. Having content also means having a website. And the more content you have on your website, the more pages, the more Google indexes it, the more it can serve up your content to more people. It's a no-brainer. So obviously the SEO for your website is as important as ever. And in fact, just like you have competition in the social networking algorithms, I mentioned, you're competing on Facebook against the mother who just saw their daughter's elementary school graduation party picture. You are also, competing from an SEO perspective against every other company that's started to invest in content marketing. And over the decade, just the amount of content on the internet just continues to exponentially increase. So SEO, I think, becomes more and more important to be seen in search engines. So how does social media work into this? Well, I would argue that YouTube is a search engine. It's always been claimed to be the second largest search engine. So obviously, if you have video, you should have them on YouTube. And you should have a similar YouTube strategy like you would have a blogging strategy in terms of the optimization as well. So we have YouTube. Pinterest is another search engine. If you were to go to the Pinterest CEO and say, is Pinterest social media? He would say, no, Pinterest is not social media. Pinterest is a search engine. Pinterest is a discovery network. So if you show up on Pinterest, you have the ability to get your content indexed, and pins have a very, very long lifespan. I still have pins from 6-7 years ago that drive me traffic, just like you would in a Google or in a YouTube. So those are three, YouTube and Pinterest, two search engine-like social networks where SEO in terms of your name, your description, the title of your boards on Pinterest, the title of your post, the description of your post, and tags or hashtags, these all come into play in how well you are shown when someone does a search for something. And the number one thing that people do on a Pinterest or on a YouTube is searching. So what about the other networks? I don't think SEO is as important on Facebook. I do think it's important on Twitter in terms of hashtag usage and making sure the keywords are in your tweet. When we get to an Instagram, that's where the hashtags become very important because, it could be a minimum of 10 to 20% extra engagement you're going to get, or 10 to 20% at a minimum additional exposure you get when you use hashtags, because that's how people search for things on Instagram. So if you're not using hashtags on Instagram, you're not showing up, right? So you want to make sure you do that. And LinkedIn is very much the same. I mean, LinkedIn profiles is a whole other story, but LinkedIn is the same. You want to be cognizant, when you develop your company page, the SEO of that, the SEO of each of the posts you put out there. LinkedIn has also recently adopted hashtags. And for a LinkedIn profile, it goes without saying that there's a tremendous amount of searches being done, especially for small businesses, small business owners. And if you have sales and marketing staff, you want to make sure that if people are looking for your business, whether it's on company pages or personal profiles, they find you. So SEO is important for these different social networks. For some social networks, it's more important than others.
Okay, that's very interesting. Getting back to hashtags, in your personal opinion, how many hashtags should you use for a tweet?
So for Twitter, 1 to 3 is fine. I don't think you want to overdo it. If you can, do it in line with your content, fine. If not, just add 1, 2, or 3 at the end. Instagram is the place where you want to use the most hashtags because they give you the ability to use 30. And I recommend that you actually use 30 to get maximum exposure.
Oh, wow.
With LinkedIn, I think it's the same as Twitter. LinkedIn hashtags are still very young. 1 to 3, I'd say on Pinterest, 1 to 3. On Facebook, today as we record this, I would not even bother with hashtags. So I don't think you want to go overboard. You want to have a natural way of thinking about them. If I'm talking about an email marketing software, I'm going to put hashtag email marketing, right? If I'm talking about, a local pizza store, I may put, hashtag Irvine for the city that I'm in, and then hashtag pizza restaurant, hashtag restaurant. It's, you don't need to spend a lot of time on this. And there are tools out there, especially for Instagram, that actually help you find hashtags that you can use. So, it requires a little bit of muscle memory, but the more you do it, the more hashtags become demystified. And the more I think that you'll get good at just naturally adding them at the end of every post you do.
Okay. Speaking of tools, what are your 5 favorite social media tools?
Well, if I go to my Google Chrome tabs, I can give you those exact ones. So number one my main social media dashboard is Agorapulse. So I manage, most of my content there, all my engagement there. It runs on every platform. It is an awesome tool that I highly recommend if you're watching this. Another tool that I use that helps me with curated content and managing that is a tool called Social Bee. That's BEE, and it's a tool a lot of people haven't heard of, but it's a very robust tool. And for sort of importing RSS feeds and creating, content around them, it's been a very, very easy tool for me and my staff to use. So that's another tool I recommend. For Pinterest, I exclusively use Tailwind. Tailwind is the definitive Pinterest tool for a lot of different reasons. Instagram, I still am using the native app, but I am looking at a few different options. Agorapulse has Instagram, Tailwind has Instagram. There's also on my Instagram marketing interview yesterday, I interviewed someone from the app Plann, that Plann. So I'm going to be taking them for a test drive as well. Those are, LinkedIn I post natively, Facebook I post natively. So it's really, Twitter is the main platform where I would use Agorapulse and or Social Bee. And then for Pinterest, Tailwind, Instagram coming soon. Another tool that I love to use to discover content to curate is BuzzSumo, or for content ideas. So that's another no-brainer. And then for SEO, I either use SEMrush or I use Alexa. And I think that every SEO tool out there is very different. You probably want to have a few. For email marketing, I recently moved from ConvertKit to ActiveCampaign, and I'm loving ActiveCampaign so far for its CRM and marketing automation. And for podcasting, I use Libsyn. So that should give you an idea of for social media metrics. I'm right now testing out a tool called Metricool out of Italy. That seems to be very cool, pun intended. And I think really, I'm looking at all the open tabs to see if I missed any. But I think, that is my current stack, which sometimes changes, but hopefully that gives you a feel for some of the tools out there you might be missing out on.
Definitely. Thank you. All right. So I know you do a lot of blogging. Would you suggest that SMBs have a planned content strategy to scale their business?
Absolutely. You do not want to be blogging in the dark. So the whole idea is, and this is where most companies make a mistake, and we talked about this about Instagram yesterday, but it could be the same about blogging. You're only blogging about your company, right? So your company had an event, you blog about it. Your company has a new product, you blog about it. Your company has a press release, you blog about it. Okay, your fans will love that content. But when we think about blogging, we think about reaching people that may not know about us, right? Your loyal fans are already loyal. Yes, you want to keep in touch with them. And probably email marketing is going to be the best way to keep in touch with them, in addition to being active in social. But when we think about blogging, we're specifically trying to reach out to Google and search engines. But in the art of blogging, we're also creating content that we can fuel our content on these different social networks with. So it's sort of like double dipping. It's a win-win, right? So when we think about blogging, right, we think about, well, if we want to get seen in more searches, what are people searching for? So there's a number of tools. I mentioned SEMrush and Alexa. There's, Google Keyword Planner. If you were to go, there's Ubersuggest, there's free tools, there's paid tools, but you want to see what are people searching for when they're searching for your product, right? They're probably not searching for your company name. If they are, they're going to find you anyway. So, it could be that they are looking for, so for instance, one of my clients is a hair color company. So when we do searches, what are people searching for hair colors? It may be hair color ideas. It may be hair color trends, hair color for the fall, hair color for Halloween, hair color for graduation. You begin to find certain themes and you begin to have an aha moment. Wow, I never thought about it from a searcher's perspective. And that is really the content that you want to create for your blog so that you show up in those searches. So you're providing resourceful content and your own perspective. It's almost like when you have one-on-one conversations with customers or on sales calls, you're probably having these conversations. You now want to replicate that in the form of a blog content, which is why if you are whether you're a B2B company or B2C company, ask your salespeople, ask your people at the register, ask your people on the showroom, what are the questions you get asked a lot? That is the gold mine for blog content. And you literally want to map it out. Now, I recommend blogging once a week. I know that's hard, but I want you to just think about 52 topics, right? And before thinking about 52 topics, let's dumb it down into a few different things. So we could do something about the technology of hair color, why we use certain ingredients that are healthy to hair, how to have healthy hair, right? That's another one. The different colors that you can do, gray coverage versus fashion coverage if you're older or younger. So there's a lot of different ways that we can now categorize that content. And then if we have 5 categories, how do we come up with 10 ideas for each category? And how then can we begin to write these over the course of a year? And if you have 52 blog posts, you have something to talk about. If you wanted to publish 10 blog posts, or if you wanted to publish a tweet every day or a Facebook post every day, after you have 30 posts, you would be able to do that, right? And there's nothing wrong with republishing content on these social networks. It's a best practice. So the more content you have in your library, the more chances for Google to find your content if consuming it's relevant, and the more chance you have to attract the right person to your content because they've already been consuming the content that you wanted to use to attract them, right? And the more you have to post to social media on a regular basis as well. So it's going to help you in many, many different ways, but it really starts with a strategic approach in terms of keyword research to make sure that what you're blogging about is what people are searching for. Because I tell you, I run neilschaefer.com. I have 25 or so contributors, and even people that are very experienced, that sometimes they'll have blog titles and blogs that seem very catchy, right? And they may attract your eye on a Twitter or a Facebook if you see the title, but in the long run, after the tweet dies, after the Facebook post dies, it's just something that people aren't searching for, and therefore those posts usually die. They just stop getting traffic after a few months. Where other posts that were more evergreen, because we did the homework in advance to search for topics that were popular that people were searching for, these posts live on for year after year after year. So that's my advice. Be really, really strategic, and don't think about you, think about them. Think about the mindset of a Google searcher, and do a little bit of research, tons of tools out there, and hopefully that'll give you the inspiration to do blogging right.
Awesome. All right, so the last question, what advice did you have for other people who want to become a social media thought leader like yourself?
Well, I think, thought leader, influencer, they're obviously different, but I think there's similarities between the two. One of the chapters in my new book on influencer marketing, The Age of Influence, actually talks about the concept of influence and why it's important for every business to become more influential. So if you're a small business, and I brought up the example of the pizza restaurant, the more influential your pizza restaurant becomes in social media, the easier it's going to be for you to work with influencers, because influencers love to work with other influencers. They love to work with brands that have influence, right? It makes them look good, and it's going to make you look good. So the concept of yielding more influence in social media and being seen as a thought leader in your industry is something that I highly recommend for any company. But getting back to, from an individual basis, I think that, becoming a thought leader requires a few different things, but obviously it requires somewhat of a niche. I became, who I am today because I wrote my first 2 books on LinkedIn, and I blogged exclusively about LinkedIn. Now, back then we weren't talking about niches. Today we talk about niches, but it provided a great way for people to remember me and know that, hey, I'm the LinkedIn guy. So over time, I have sort of, progressed into talking about everything social, because my clients are not just B2B clients. They need help on every social network, which is why I have, evolved into not just one niche, but talking about a lot of different things. But definitely having a niche is going to help you be remembered and help you to be the go-to person. The next thing you need is content, right? This is social media. Unless you have content that is truly, thought leading, no one is going to follow you. No one's going to give you the time of day. So at the end of the day, for whatever you're doing, it's not like, fake it till you make it. You really need to have professional experience or, personal experience in whatever you have that niche on, so that you have something to talk about on a regular basis. So you need to be a content creator, and every influencer at the heart is a content creator. And this is where you need to be creating content. I don't care if it's video, photo, text, blog, whatever, but you need to be out there creating content. Obviously, in addition to being a content creator, you need to be active in social media, and you really need to be an engager. When people reach out to you, you need to reach back out to them. You need to be proactively engaging with people. Engagers, content creators win and engagers come in second. So, and the content creators who engage absolutely come in first above just content creators. So that concept of engaging and reaching out to people proactively, but also being there when people need you and have a question about your topic of authority, that's really, really important in building this. So over time, you build a content library, you build a following, you get more and more people talking about you vis-a-vis the subject that you want to be a thought leader on. Now it's time to really accelerate this, and you really want to get out there. So this is where you begin to reach out to podcasts. It becomes sort of a PR activity. You reach out to conferences that you want to speak at. You reach out to blogs for guest blog opportunities. This helps you just reach more and more and more people. And what you really want is the surround the sound effect, right? Surround sound is heard everywhere, no matter where you are. And it sounds like it's coming from all sorts of directions. And this is where you want to be. You want to be like seen and heard everywhere. I've had someone say, Neil, like, dude, you're like everywhere. You're an animal. And I'm not everywhere, but I am, selective as to the networks I'm active on. And I make sure when I'm on them, I'm seen. Excuse me. So that's sort of my advice. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. There's definitely some prerequisites that you need to be aware of, i.e. having enough experience to talk about it. And it takes time to build up the engagement in the community. But over time, I think that is the way you do it. And I think there's always, I see people that have emerged over the last year that were a nobody a few years ago. So it can and does happen. If that's the direction you want to take, it's possible. Just, follow those steps.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Neil, for taking the time. You provided a lot of great information. I think our audience is really going to appreciate.
Oh, you're very welcome. I hope that I hope you found value in this, and I hope that you'll find me if there's any add-on questions, and if I could be of any help. Whenever I do these, I like to think of them as continual conversations. So just because the interview is done doesn't mean our relationship has been done. So
absolutely. All right. Thank you so much, Neil.
Thanks.